Hello and welcome back. I'm Randy Newbert from VoodooFX. In today's short video, we'll be talking about weathering techniques. So let's get started. Okay, so we've got a couple of essential items that you will need to do when you're doing this style of weathering. I've painted up a sample card that will depict kind of what I'm going for in this project that I'm going to be doing, applying the weather effects to. So I've got a silver color here, and I've got a light gray or medium gray color on the opposite side. And what I need for this is I usually always have a little bit of water in a spray bottle, and this helps with some of the staining techniques. And I always usually have some kind of a brush. This is a very fine brush, and this is what I'll be using to use the. What I'm going to be going for is kind of the leaky pipe look, or the stained and dripping pipe area, like a broken joint or somewhere where oil's been leaking out of an area. I prefer using a medium gray color as opposed to a black to start with. The reason why is the black is a very harsh and very strong accent, and the gray tends to be less harsh and a little more easier to control to start. I can always come back over it, but once I'm committed, you don't want to start with a really dark color. You want to kind of start with a lighter shade and then work your way into a darker shade. So that's just kind of the gist of how I'm going to do the this style of weathering. There's many techniques in weathering, but this is just going to be one. So what I'm using here is I'm using these standard, these basic liquid latex style, just a water-based acrylic paint, and it mixes really good with water, and it's a very nice look. And what I'm using in these, I'm using two color ranges. I'm using the gray is usually what I start with, and then I have a little bit of black as well, so I can get up into the darker stage. So these are the two main colors I'm going to be using for this project, is to get started. You can also use other colors that will be closer to, like if you wanted it to be a rusty stain, you can use some of this like burned umber, or these other colors, and you can intermix all the colors together if that's what you're after for look. So anyway, so how I end up starting this up when I do it is, what I start with, just for the test sample, is I've already put a little bit of the color over here on each one of these little divots in here that I'm going to use to mix. And I've got a little bit of water that I've already put in here. So I'm going to break this down with a little bit of water. I'm going to take a little bit of the gray color, and I'm going to move it over into this next little spot. I'm going to mix from there. I'm just going to take a little bit of water and a little bit of the color, and I'm going to mix them down until it's kind of pretty loose. And I just want to keep mixing it down a little bit until I get it to the right consistency that I like. And I'm going to grab a little more water, and you just keep doing this and keep building it up until you kind of get this nice, loose, but pullable effect. Now, since this is going to be held up on a surface that's, going to be standing straight up here, or, these are going to be what I consider mimicking the windows. So these are like the little window holes that I'll be trying to have the stain come out of, or they're going to be dripping from these little hole areas. And I don't want to bring them down too far, but I want to just have them just kind of, maybe half the way or a little bit longer. And so how I do this is, once I get the mix up nice and good and I'm happy with it, I'll go ahead and what I'll do is I'm going to flip the card over, and this side's just just white styrene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to I start with just drawing a line, and I just draw a real basic line down the side. And you can kind of just stop it there. See how I stopped right there? I got to see if I'm able to get a little bit better close up. But so I stopped right there with the drip, And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back over it with just a little bit of water and a little more color. And I'm going to slowly going to build the outside here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little more on each side. And I'm going to fatten it up. I'm just going to fatten it up and I'm going to drip it right down the middle. So that's basically how you get the stain. Now you can run this out a little bit more. If you want to just kind of draw it down a little bit longer. See, I just pulled it down. And then when that's all dried out, that's going to create a nice looking drip line as far as the look goes. But you got to let this dry all the way until you can kind of start pulling over it. So what I do also to randomize this and make it look a little bit more believable is there's never ever one drip line that's smaller or, you know, longer than one or the other. So you can always just have like a one next to it that's a little bit shorter. And then that way it makes it look really, you know, the consistency is really believable if you make these a little bit smaller. And they can be very jagged. And this one, we're just going to run it all the way down. So I'm going to go back there. I'm going to touch this in. And you just keep running it. And I went a little fat there, but... So then that one runs all the way out. Now, if you get in a position where you don't really like what you see there, the nice thing about the acrylic is you can just kind of go over the top of it and you can very carefully just wipe it out. And if you get it off the surface early enough, this one's just starting to set, then you kind of get this, you know, this weathered effect, but yet it's, you know, it's very controllable. And again, I'm going to run down a little bit more. And you build this a little bit as you go. And see, these are kind of like my tester versions to find out if this is what I want. And then what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up drying this and letting it dry all the way until I'm really happy with it. You can see it's still really wet. And when it dries, it'll dry pretty fast. So I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to go back to my mix that I already made, the water-based mix. And I'm just going to add a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and it won't be as harsh on this because it's already gray. So what you want to do, again, you just want to barely, you kind of want to make it look like it's, you know, running water down it, or it's just coming down and it's leaking. And that's kind of nice. It's broken up a little bit. I sealed this side up, so again, you can take some raw color and you can put it around the area. And again, you could like improvise the line a little more and just lay it down like that. And then now I've got a good idea of how it's going to look. And again, you don't like the spot, you can just wipe it off with a paper towel and a little bit of water. Now, I'm going to mix up another color over here. I'm going to take a little of the black. I'll just show you what the black looks like. So I'm going to make a little bit of a loose mix. And I want it to be very, very kind of watery and transparent. And now I'm going to go over to the silver side. And so what I'm going to do here is, again, I'm just kind of going to let it drip down, and I'm going to try to keep my line as straight as possible. And I'm going to add it on there, and you see it's kind of beating off. It's kind of normal because it's on a sealed painted surface. I'm going to take a little of that out, and then I can let that dry. And you always start off really, really thin because it's really easy to come back and just keep beefing it up and making it stronger and stronger. A lot of times it's really so easy to overdo this when you're doing weathering, because it's just easy to get really grimy and dirty real fast. I'm going to add a little more up there. And again, I'm going to come back. You could pepper around the hole a little bit. Sometimes it looks nice just to fill the hole around a little bit with the dark color. Again, I'm going to just make it a little shorter. I'll pull it across that aluminum there. And there you go. So that's kind of like a good starting base for the drip. And again, this side is still dry, so I'm going to have to dry this off real quick. And then I can show you a little bit more about how I'm going to go about making the color and getting it to blend. Again, so this side's still a little bit wet. So that's your basic technique as far as going for making weathering that you want, to look like it's dripping out of a area or surface. I'll go over a couple other techniques that I'm also going to use here. So this is just one. Let me dry this up. I'll be right back and get this dried, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so I've dried off the piece, and it's basically the acrylic paint is set now. And if I put it on here, it's not really going to smudge off. It's on there pretty good as far as the drying of it. So now that you're at this stage, there's a couple other ways we can go about doing different effects like this. Now, the other method is going to be a little bit different. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the squirt bottle, and let me pull this off camera just a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spritz a little bit of water on top of the surface to start. And this will give me, I'll be able to add paint on there and kind of let it drip along the edge. And this is how we get like bulk weathering of an area that looks like it's moldy or, it's got some kind of surface mold on it. So anyway, I'm just going to take a big spray, and we got just a real small amount. It's wet. And in this case, I'll just take some of the black. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just basically put it all over this spot where it's wet. And I'll do the same with the area where we already went over. Now what I'm going to do is something a little different. Now in this case, now I got my lineage, right? And you can see where it kind of leaked down the line. So I got my lineage. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the water, and I'm going to spray it on there a few times. And I'm going to just slowly tap it off. And I'm going to take a little of this off, these water droplets. And you can see I've moved some of the other material off, but I still have the existing stuff that I did before on. So we're just going to make this a little bolder. Just have it drag off into nowhere. And I'm going to wipe this down a little bit. What's nice about the acrylics is you got a lot of control if you keep the surface wet until they fully dry out. So anyway, so that's kind of what you're after as far as the look goes. And I'll dry this out again, and it will take on a little bit of a different look. Now, as far as like doing bulk, if we're really going for a lot of bulk look, what we do is we mix up this area, and we do actually like a wash all the way through. Now, if you see on the white, you can see that, this is on a white piece, but you can see how it's more subtle as far as the look goes. And this is kind of what you're after. It always looks a little different when you're applying it to different colors, and especially the white. In this case, it's silver and gray, but the application is still the same. So again, this is kind of like if you want to beef it up, you want to make it a little longer, a little shorter, and the lines could be a little, they don't have to be perfect, but they do need to look a little bit uniformed. And again, I'm going to build the outside a little bit because it's a little thicker there. I'm going to keep kind of bringing it down. And that would be like a really, again, kind of a long stain. And then what you can do too is if you want to kind of add a little detail to it, you can put a little bit around the area and just build it up. And just keep building it in when it's nice and wet. And again, you could dab a little off with the wet towel. Keep pushing it through. And then you can leave some of the excess there. And then, you know, when you got a clean rag when it's wet and the surface is sealed, you can just basically take the rag and you kind of wipe the line out of it. So what I'm kind of doing here is just, even though the hole's already filled up pretty good, and I don't want all that down there. I'll add a little more here and there. Again, a little ziggly line. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. And again, I'm going to put a little more material. And I'm just going to pat it around the area. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to remove a little bit. And this gives it a really good detailed look. And again, you can build this up as small, as straight or flat as you want, or not any at all. So again, a lot of control when you're doing streaking like this. And that's basically it. You know, I'm gonna fill around the hole a little bit, but not quite all of it. And that's it. Now I'm gonna dry this up. Just let me go off screen here for a sec. And I'm going to dry this up a little bit, and then you'll be able to see better what the effect is between the harsher and the harder line and the softer kind of effect. So there you go. So this is all dried up now, and this is, you know, again, this is a little bit more of a bolder line that's on here on the silver. This is more of a distorted and kind of faint, you know, more of a faint look as far as the drip goes. And then again, what I'm also going to do is this, again, this is just a test sample to get me prepared for how I'm going to do the streaking. So this is real crucial when you're getting ready to do a weather job. You really want to do a test sample first in order to get yourself kind of into the gear and get you used to what you're going to do with it. So in that way, when you go to the finished product, you're not making big mistake there. Say, oh, I didn't want it that strong. I wanted a lot less. And again, I'm going to show you the real beauty of this stuff. Even though it's kind of set up on here, if you take a little water and you go down, and again, it'll really come off right where it's thin. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to streak it. And I'm just going to go down it a couple times, really, really soft with the water and a little bit of that. And then it just kind of softens it down a little bit. And you got to watch out. You don't want it to get too muddy out here on the outskirts. So you got to keep your rag pretty clean when you're doing it. And that's kind of what you're after. So anyway, so this is kind of the technique. And this is what you're looking for as far as you know, what you want to get in for a stained, you know, look of something that's leaking down the side of a wall or a spot. And I'm going to show a little closer up view of what it looks like when we start pushing the dry mix into the crevices and all the little areas. I'm going to do like a medium gray black wash over certain areas, and I'll just drip it into these little spots, and that's how you'll get it. So anyway, so I'll do a little more extensive training on this area, but this is kind of how you do general weathering. So anyway, so thanks for watching the video, and please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.